Welcome to Black and Forth. This is where we highlight conversations for the culture. I'm your host, Nori. I'm excited to be here. And I have a very special guest with me today, Mr. Greg Jackson. And he is known in a multitude of rooms. He has definitely been killing it in the political space, as well as killing it, just in life and making good investments and being able to see a return on investments. And that's one of the reasons we have Greg here on our show talking about wealth principles and what that means overall and what that means as we grow, especially as Black people. And so, Greg, I don't want to, give you all your accolades without making sure I do them properly. So please, for the audience, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background for those that don't know who you are.
Yeah, I'm just a brother who budgets, but I grew up in a place called Fluvanna County, Virginia. I grew up pretty rural poverty, to be honest. But my family made some pretty strong sacrifices to build wealth for myself and for future generations. They bought a farm about 30 years ago at this point for less than $200,000, and kind of like created just literally the physical foundation for our family to grow. And so that was kind of the little seed that was planted. For me, I went off to college, and obviously after college, I moved to Washington, D.C. I was always very passionate about politics, especially since I saw that Malcolm X movie when they ran up on the police station to demand their brother get some hospital treatment. That was so inspiring to me. And so I wanted to help build movements and organize people to fight for what they believed in. And so that led me to landing on the Obama campaign back in the day. So I was there for the first real run as the chair of D.C. for Obama, and we sent a lot of volunteers from D.C. into Virginia. And then was hired for the re-election campaign. And then literally spent 2009 to 2014 of my life fighting for him in different capacities. But in 2013, I was shot by a stray bullet here in Washington, D.C., and turned from being kind of an activist and organizer to a survivor of gun violence, and just really shifted my focus to do more work locally. I started working in the mayor's office as her director of community relations, and then took on just a plethora of initiatives and projects to help address gun violence in Washington, D.C. And while it was extremely empowering and impactful, it really became clear to me how big of an issue this is when one of my family friends was shot and killed in Greensboro, North Carolina. And just looking at what Greensboro was doing versus D.C., versus Baltimore, versus Charlotte, versus Austin, Texas, versus Miami, it just kind of made it very clear that every city is approaching this a different way. And some are being really successful and some are failing, frankly. And so that kind of inspired me to want to do more national work around this issue to help build out these solutions and scale out what we knew worked, both in policy and in programs. And so with that, I joined a group called the Community Justice Action Fund. But as it pertains to wealth, in order for me to join the Community Justice Action Fund, which was a nonprofit, I had to take a pretty sizable pay cut. To leave from government and consulting world and to go into nonprofit world was serious. And a lot of folks don't go that route because they are afraid about the money and how it impacts them and their future and how they can set themselves up for their family. And so, but I didn't want to turn away from my passion. And so I decided to really buckle down and be more serious about my own wealth and my own management of funds. And so a lot of the lessons I've learned along the way, they started before this moment, but I really started to take them very seriously when my entire way of life shifted for me to pursue this passion to address gun violence nationally. So that's a little bit about me. And I'm excited to be here. I live in Southeast. I like basketball. I don't know what I was supposed to say. I'm a Lakers fan. I'm an Aries. I'm single. I'm a Lakers fan. I don't know what else to give you, but yeah, that's a little basic stuff. I drive a Jeep. I'm a Jeep enthusiast.
Mm-hmm. So. I'm a little bit of a Jeep enthusiast. I have a Renegade. It's not a Wrangler, and it's a big difference. It's a big difference. No, but one of the reasons, again, we're having this conversation is I've had the opportunity to get to know you throughout the years. And one of the things that I've really picked up on is that you know how to manage and move money. You know how to budget. And it's something that you're passionate about because you talk about it. It comes out in regular, everyday conversations. And so I've talked to you about some personal thoughts and ideas about how I can do better with my finances. And I thought to myself, this is a great opportunity to share this with other people, because I just truly believe you have a wealth of knowledge. And so with that being said, you said something earlier that really struck me, and that's that your family made an early investment when you were younger. So talk to me about how your family first introduced you into being able to manage funds and running a farm, and what did that really mean as you grew up as a kid in rural Virginia, and how that's transferred to being in a bigger city?
Yeah. So my parents came from really humble beginnings. They were both first generation college students. My mom, when she got out of college, she was a substitute teacher and a bus driver.
Oh, wow.
Just kind of scraping it together. My dad started in insurance, but then they eventually landed with a major power company in Virginia. My father worked in HR. My mom worked in engineering. And I'll be honest, like growing up, we moved around a lot. I moved 6 times, before middle school. And so I was at a different school pretty much every other year, which was challenging as a kid. But my parents were literally willing to up and move for opportunity. And there was no hesitation. If that's where the job was, if that's where the wealth was, if that's where the opportunity was, we was packing our bags and we were going. And I think that's maybe a little bit different from like a military person where it's part of the job. For us, they were chasing the dream, literally. And so that was really interesting for me. And then, we settled on the farm, and, my parents, they didn't tell us a lot. They were always just save your money, save your money. They didn't break down 401ks and all of that. But as I've gotten older, like I learned a lot because I observed a lot of what they did. And so when we finally bought the farm, we bought over 100 acres for, again, less than 200,000. And it was super, super cheap.
I did not know y'all had 100 acres of land.
Oh, yeah. It was super cheap. And look, but honestly, it included a house on it. My parents didn't have a lot. They scraped their way into it. The house had no running heat. It had no oven, only one room. You could put a little plug up heater, a little space heater. We put a space heater in one room, and me and my mom, my dad, my brother all slept in that same room on a little plastic bunk bed from Walmart. You know what I mean? And that's where we stayed the first year. We redid the roofs together. We repainted together. We redid the floors together. We re-insulated the house together. I mean, we did it all together. And looking back, I just thought like, man, we just don't got it. We just don't have it. We got to piece this thing together. But what I realized later in life is that they had put everything on the line to get this little plot of land. And they knew how valuable it would be, but they also knew it would be straight up grind, to be honest. And that's what we did. And we went from building the house and making it livable to building the farm, to putting up the fences, to clearing the woods, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we literally just built our own farm. And then once my folks saved up enough money, they built their dream house on the same plot of land, just on the other side. And so from there, we kind of built from it. And because they had the farm, a lot of people don't recognize is that if you are actually registered as a farm, you can get vehicles as farm usage. You can get tractors taxed off as farm usage. You can get pretty much any technology. I mean, my dad he had gotten to a point where he was able to write off, 70, 80% of what he owned because it was all farm usage. But hey, you could drive a pickup to work, or hey, you can drive a pickup to the grocery store too. You know what I'm saying? And people don't recognize how much power is in farm-based tax relief. It's way more far-reaching than small businesses and LLC corporations, et cetera. And so, yeah, we were literally building an empire on what people consider just a plot of dirt. And so now looking back, I think a lot of what they built has put us in a good position, but it's also just planted that seed in me, the value of land, the power of land, and the power of being okay with leaving like the convenience of the city and the convenience of being downtown and just moving out to find your opportunity, and build your own vision and wealth. And I think that was kind of a valuable lesson I learned early, and I keep continuing to implement.
So, you talked about how the importance of that land and that ownership. You also mentioned a 401k. So when people start to think about, long-term money, people start to think about what their future looks like. A lot of people do think of 401ks. What are your thoughts on them? people pull up, some people pull out of them early. Some people keep their 401ks. People are not staying with companies like they used to. There was a time that people stayed with a company for 30 years and you could retire from that company. Our generation just not moving like that. So, a 401 with a company, get your own 401k. What are your thoughts on building with that?
Well, definitely do it. My folks, we did our will and recently, and we had a chance to open the books and look at what they have and what they, gained over the years. And my parents' 401k wealth is comparable to everything they hustled and grind for, as far as salary, income, land ownership, etc. And that happened because they maxed out early and they stayed with it. And I think the biggest misconception is that just because you switch jobs means you kind of ruining your 401k. In reality, you can roll that over. You can roll it over into your new job. You can move it into an IRA. There's a lot you can do with it. Some companies will continue to invest it, right? And so even though you left, that company might be still working your money and helping you build wealth, even if you aren't contributing anymore. So first of all, yes, definitely do it. Second of all, though, I think the biggest thing for people to recognize is really the percentages and understanding what is a good rate of return. I've talked to a few folks about this, and I listen to tons of podcasts where I get most of my knowledge, podcasts, and just surrounding myself with people who know this stuff. But a good return on your investment is 8%, right? That's a good job. Thumbs up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if that's the bar, then you need to assess every dollar that you put out in investment. Is it matching up to that 8%? Now we look at our 401ks, and again, 401ks are a little safer. So a lot of them are probably only giving you 5-6%, which isn't bad. That's still good. And because it's safe and protected and just, easy, great. Keep maxing that bad boy out. But if you have a credit card that's killing you and you're paying 22% on this credit card, but then you turn around and max out your contribution to your 401k at 8%, then you might need to pull back a little bit and pay off this credit card and then go back to your full contribution, right?
Okay.
If you have, if you're putting all this money in Robinhood on stocks and it looks amazing because Apple jumps 20% today and it goes down 12% tomorrow and it jumps up 30% today. But when you look at that annual, if that annual is below that 8%, then honestly, you should be reevaluating how where you're putting your money. And so again, I would encourage everyone to max out on their 401k, but if you have some crazy debt or some situation is hanging over you that is hurting you more than your 401k is helping you, then you should think about that decision. Do I invest it, clean up my mess, and then get back to investing in myself? Or do I keep kind of, dipping my hand in poison in one hand and then planting with the other? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So like I said, I'm a big fan of 401ks, but again, if you look at that 8% as kind of your bar, you need to always assess, is this investment giving me that 8%? If it's not, am I comfortable with it? If it is, am I excited about it? And if it's doing more than that, then how can I find more money to go into that? And then vice versa. If your debt is killing you, then putting something that's only getting you 8% one way when you owe 17% interest rate on this other loan, then you really shouldn't be investing anyway. You should just be focused on your loans. So hopefully that makes sense. But that's kind of how I feel about 401ks. Like just do it, but also really assess it against your current debt if you have any.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are dealing with debt and are quietly suffering through their debt instead of really trying to figure out ways to get out of that debt so that they don't have that that cloud hanging over them. So one of the things that I've seen you do is diversify your portfolio, whether that's real estate, whether that is investing in startups, whether that is actually cutting down on your debt. So for someone who's just starting and not really sure of, how they want to move as far as where to start, what are some of the things, I know you talked about the percentage rate, but what are some of the things that they can do to start to move towards building wealth when they really may have the bare minimum?
Okay, so let's step back for a second. You talked about how people kind of suffer in silence. There's an actual term for that. It's called ostrich syndrome. Now think about the big bird, ostrich. I'm sure y'all all watch cartoons or whatever. When an ostrich gets in trouble, what does it do, Nori?
Bury its head in the sand.
Bury its head in the sand. And that's what a lot of us do with our wealth and our debt, frankly. We're like, oh, I'm in debt. Oh man, I don't want to look at it. You get the little envelope, you throw it in the trash. right? You get the little alert, you just swipe up. You don't want to read it right now. You know what I'm saying? So I
Mhm.
think the first things first, and we do that with our health too, frankly. And if there's anything that you cannot be an ostrich about, it's your health and your wealth, because it'll only get worse if you don't look at it. And same
Mhm.
thing with health. You know, if you got a little sore on your leg, like, oh, it'll go away. No, that sore could turn into a whole infestation. You know what I'm saying? And you could wind up amputating
Staff,
your leg.
yeah.
Yeah. So like, look, you can't have the ostrich syndrome when it comes to your own personal wealth or your own personal debt. And so that's the first big thing, is just face it, face it, face it. And for me, what I had to do, my mom said this. My mom told me this. Again, this is wealth principles. I'm not going super intense right now, but my mom said, just write down all your debt and then write down all the money you make. And I will say do that, but what my mom missed out on is write down all your debt, but then write down the interest rates for each of those debts.
Mhm.
Right, your APR for your credit cards, your loan interest rate for your car or your house. And then you can kind of rank out what's hurting you the most. And then
Mhm.
step back and look at, okay, let's rank out my income, let's rank out my investments. And once you put it all on two pieces of paper or one piece of paper, it becomes very obvious, right? Like, again, you might be throwing $500 a month into Robinhood and getting you a good 4 or 6% and think you're doing something. But then you have a $3,000 credit card that's eating away, 18% a year, right? Or 4% a month. And so I think
Mhm.
that's like the first big thing. Like, if you're suffering and you're struggling, like, just make sure you got at least, you're attacking your debt aggressively. The other thing is, once you get past your debt, my strong recommendation is that you build up your emergency fund. And a lot of us say, oh, emergency, whatever, I'm invincible, I'm young, I'm good, I'm gonna figure it out. But COVID showed us very upfront and personal that emergencies do happen. And unfortunately, it's not
Absolutely.
just a month. It's not just your car breaking down and you got to figure out. No, we've been in COVID for what, 7, 8 months now? You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah,
so
probably
if you
9, 10.
yeah, and if you didn't have an emergency fund right now, I'm sure a lot of folks didn't. You starving, or you figuring it out, or you getting real creative. And again, that's great. We want people to be creative, but we don't want you to starve. And the way you avoid starving is just being aggressive about saving. But again, before you start spending, before you start investing. And so there's a really great woman called, she has an Instagram called Poised Finance. Y'all should check it out.
Mhm.
But she talks about how to do that. The first big thing is you want to get to 3 months emergency savings, right? But then
Yep.
after you get to that 3 months, you're supposed to keep building on it. So let's say you hit that 3 months in 2020. In 2021, you should be saving to add one more month of emergency savings. Then 2022, you should save up to have one more month of emergency savings. 2023, you have 3 more additional months. So by 2023, you should have 6 months of emergency saving built up. And again, emergency savings should not destroy your entire investment approach. It's just something you need to pitch that and build on. Another big thing is make sure you put your emergency savings somewhere safe. And by safe, I mean safe from everybody, even yourself. And
Mhm.
so put it in an account that you don't have easy access to. So it still takes you 3 days to get it transferred from my savings to my checking account. How Kevin Hart said, I get my money from my savings to my checking. So like, look, you should do that for yourself, because again, if you see that, PS5, or you really like this dress or shoes or something, you're going to pull from that, unless you have that time to think about it. And so many of us, when we have that time to really think about it, we step back from the impulse purchases. So your emergency
Mhm.
saving, if nothing else, should be there. But then once you have that 3 months emergency savings, then you've tackled your debt, then that's when I recommend you just go crazy and start really attacking the investment game. But not until you've done that yet, right? And so many of us, again, we look at Robinhood, we see, oh, so and so got a off of Fenty, off of Adidas, or whatever. Great, they did great. But you got to get your house in order before you start venturing out big time and buying Bitcoins, et cetera, in my opinion. Again, this is principle. The second big thing is, when you're trying to figure out how to save and how to deal with debt, what I recommend is just tracking your expenses. I use mint.com. They have an app and everything. You sync all your bank accounts to it. And the only major thing it does is it just tracks all of your expenses. It categorizes them, and it gives you reports and recommendations. And
So let
so,
me let me
mhm,
interject. Is
yeah,
this equivalent to QuickBooks? Like QuickBooks? Yes, no.
I think it's way better. It's way better and way more user friendly. QuickBooks is
Is it
great
is
for
it free?
businesses. It's free. Yep, it is free,
Okay.
and it's free. Now, we'll tell you they try to sell you stuff in there, but you don't have to buy it. Just, ignore it.
Okay.
But they do really great recommendations, and so they'll show you your trends and what you're doing. And so the first scary thing I saw when I did this is I was spending when I first started getting my shit together, I was spending more money on eating out and drinking than I was in rent. And I was like, yo, yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy. It was crazy. It was crazy. Absolute crazy. And I don't know if folks who listening, I live in Washington, D.C., where rent is like on a low end, $1,500 a month. So at that time, yeah, I looked at, I think I spent like 22, I don't know exact number. I think it was like 22,000 on rent, and I spent like 23,000 on food. And I was like, oh my God. And so I went back and I was like, this is nuts. This is nuts. But that's because I wasn't cooking it all. I was Uber eating it, happy houring it, going out on the weekends, going on a date. You know what I'm saying? Like but you won't see me in the grocery store. You know what I mean? So I decided to do two things. So once I knew that was the problem, again, I could focus on it. Before that, I was just an ostrich. I just swipe. That was good. I got $6 burger instead of the $10 burger. I thought I was doing good. But once I knew that was the problem, I started to lean in on that. And so figuring out, okay, how do I delete the apps that are soaking money out of my pocket? How do I make sure I'm meal prepping? How do I make sure I'm cutting down on drinking? Or if I am drinking, I drink at the house instead of going out. Or why don't I decide to not go out as much and create other hobbies that were fun and social, but didn't involve spending money and food and drinking. So that's when I started joining like run clubs and bike clubs, because that was fun and social, but didn't require the typical meet me at the bar, social, happy hour type of vibe or brunch type of vibe. But I started to lean in on that. And I knew if I could like cut that number in half, because again, this is over 20K. If I could cut that in half, and that's $10,000 that I could put into my emergency, which again, my emergency fund for 3 months in my life was $8,500. So I was literally eating my emergency. You know what I'm saying? So I was like, all right, I just got to figure out how to stop eating. Just stop eating. So if I stop eating it, you know what I'm saying, then I can at least knock that out. And it was like, boom. And then once I got that done, boom. And then I looked at like the second line item and the third line item, and I realized the trends of how I was spending money. None of them were intentional. None of them were like things I was excited to do. It was just me cutting corners and me living a more convenient, easy lifestyle, and being frankly reckless with my money. The other thing I will recommend too is, I forgot what book I was reading, but it was like, don't let casual wants destroy passionate desires. And so essentially what they're saying is like, don't let like, man, I really want some cheesecake, right? Don't let that disrupt your trip to Dubai or your trip to Turks and Caicos. And if you start to look at like, okay, what is my goal? How much is it going to cost me to go to this big trip? Because I always wanted to go in Turks and Caicos. It's going to cost me $6,000, whatever. If you just put that on the front of your mind, put it on the backdrop of your phone, put it on your mirror in your bathroom or your kitchen or whatnot, then you'll see it. And so when you're sitting at the restaurant and you're like, man, I really want dessert, but is this cheesecake worth Turks and Caicos? No, right? When you're shopping online, you're like, man, that's a really nice dress or some nice J's. But is that worth Turks and Caicos? No. And so you just have to like compare all these small casual desires, or casual wants, and how they will chip away at your opportunities to do something really great that you really, really want to do. And so even if you're not really big into investing and you don't really care about wealth, we all have passions. We all want a nice car or to go on this amazing trip or buy a home or buy this, dress. All of us have those big lofty goals. And so if you just always make sure that big lofty goal is in direct competition with like those small casual purchases, then I guarantee you'll make way less. And so I kind of had to do that. I kind of had to start doing that for my life. Like I don't want my child to have to pay for college. So I think about that when I'm ordering Uber Eats. It's like, all right, well, I'm gonna just,
Damn,
okay.
You know what I'm saying? You're not going to Uber Eats because you think about your college.
I mean, look.
College bill.
I mean, look, I'm thinking like, is Uber Eats worth my kids getting student loans? Not really, right? So let me just throw this little pizza in the fridge, And again, I'm not the best at it, but at least like I had that mentality and I'm trying to apply those strategies all the time. And you're always going to fail. We're going to fail at this. It's okay. Like, don't beat yourself up. I'm not perfect. I'm not the greatest, but at least I know what I should be doing, even if I'm making mistakes. And so I think it starts there.
No, I think everything that you shared is important. One of the things that you continuously touched on is really mindset. Like, what is your mindset and what's your relationship with money? I talked to someone and they said most people have a really bad relationship with money because they were never, it's like, they were never taught to love money, appreciate money, value money. Not that you want that to be the overarching theme of your life, but a respectability with your funds. And so, we value so many material things that when you start to think of the things that can contribute to a better lifestyle versus in the moment, you're right. Then people miss the bus and miss that opportunity. So I think you've shared like a lot of great starting points for people to think through, like how do they want to continue?
Broke up a little bit there.
So what I was saying was, it's important to understand how you feel about money and how you feel about wealth. Obviously there is the thought that, sometimes money feels so far away or so unattainable to have an abundance of it, that you just kind of get stuck. And so have there been moments where you felt stuck or you wasn't sure about, which direction you wanted to go in when it came to building wealth, kind of where you were in the beginning versus where you are now?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely been stuck. But I'll say one thing about mindset. As humans, we're wired to be good. We're wired to be good problem solvers. We figure it out. And anything that we think about, we'll figure it out. And the only problem is a lot of us are just not thinking about this, right? And you just said it, like we're putting it in the back of our head, like we just want to think about it later. But I guarantee a lot of us, we spend every day thinking about how we can look better, right? We spend every day thinking about how we can sound better, how we can get to work and perform a little better, how we can be more attractive for dating. We spend more time thinking about how do we get our Instagram likes up and our followers up, or how do we say this witty caption before we post something? You know what I mean? Like our minds are already like performing the task of breaking down these really challenging and sometimes complex problems. But it's just a matter of what are you prioritizing. And so with mindset, the first thing I learned was, regardless of what strategy you implement, how do you make sure that money's in the front of your mind at all times? And not in I'm super wealth and that's all I care about, greed approach. Yeah. But like if you check your Instagram 20 times a day, then why can't you check your bank account once a day? Right? Like, why can't you? Like, what's the difference? Just put the app next to each other. I'm gonna check my Instagram. Well, hold up. Let me just check my money first. Make sure nothing crazy happens. So at least you walk into the day. Like you should know right now how much money you have in each of your account by memory. Like you shouldn't have to like go to an account and worry and be in question. Like just put it in front of your mind. And so I will say, like, there's definitely been moments where I felt big slumps when I first started to really pay attention to my spending habits. I was so defeated, frankly. I was like, man, I can't cook. You know what I mean? It's like, man, like I'm not gonna miss happy hour. Like it's like, man, do I really want to like disrupt my entire life? And I struggle with it. I mean, I spent months just not even figuring out how to get out of that rut. But if nothing else, I knew it was a rut. You know what I mean? And I think that's the biggest thing. If you know you're in a rut and you can't get to your goals, you'll figure it out. The most important thing is just to know about it and to keep your eye focused on it. When I focused in on my first credit card bill, I had set out a plan to get it paid in 8 months. I got that damn thing done in 2.5 months. Because I was so, oh my God, yeah. Because I was just so, and not because I like made some big money play or anything like that. No, because it was front of mind. And so everything I was doing, I was comparing to that debt. It was like, man, am I going out to eat or eat this sandwich? Eat this sandwich. Am I going to get another drink or I'm going to go home? Go home. Am I going to order these shoes or this shirt or am I going to chill? Am I going to like call an Uber to get to this thing or am I just going to not go or walk? I'm just not going to go or walk. You know what I'm saying? Like I was just like every decision I was focused on that. You know what I mean? It was front of mind. It was like goal number 1, 2, and 3. And so if you have that rut, if you want to get to a certain mark or you feel like you're in a low, I know it may sound like not really, it might not sound intuitive to do this, but put that big ass wall right in front of you and you'll figure out how to climb over it. You know what I mean? Don't just turn your back on it. Like you'll figure out how to get over it. And you'll get creative and you'll start searching for ways to get there. And the good thing about money is that there's so many ways to get to where you want to get. I mean, there's literally millions of scenarios of how you can become a millionaire, right? And just don't underestimate yourself and your creativity. Most of my business ventures all started from me, frankly, looking at something I was spending a lot of money on and figuring out how do I make it profitable. So even like, yeah. So like brunch, for example, we would spend a lot of time at brunch. When we started the Wave USA, one of our first ventures was brunch, because we already was spending $80, $90 a week at brunch. Why don't we host our own brunch, and at least we don't have to pay for it? That's one big line item, $380 off of my budget every year, just because I'm not paying for every month, right? So if I'm going to brunch 4 times a month, what is that? 90? Yeah, that's like what, almost $400. And so if I can cut that out of my budget for 12 months or at least 8 months, then boom, what are we looking at? Come on, do some numbers with me. $3,200. $3,200. $3,200 a month I would save. $3,200 a year I would save if I just don't go to brunch. But imagine if brunch started to pay me. And it was like, oh, well, I get $500 a month from brunch, hosting brunch events. Then boom, now I go from losing $3,200 to making $3,200, which means that's worth $6,400 in my life. And so anyway, so just thinking about like whatever your problems are, like keep thinking about solutions. And sometimes it's cutting back. Other times it's getting creative about finding a way to do what you love without actually paying it, or maybe even making it profitable. And so again, if you're in that rut, just keep thinking, like, because you'll find it. And if you don't find it, we're in a world where there's 1,000,000,001 podcasts on this stuff. There's 1,000,000,001 YouTube clips on this stuff. Just search for it. The greatest podcast where I learned almost everything that I know about money was a podcast called Listen, Money Matters. 2 corny white dudes drinking beer, just telling their life, their financial life. And it opened my eyes so much. And I only found them because I was seeking them out. And when I seek them out, I listened to all 200 of their episodes, and I still re-listen to them all the time. And so if you're in that rut, again, just if you're in that wall, you see that wall, put it in front of you, keep thinking about it, keep searching, use the internet, use your resources, use your friends, use your family, and just keep thinking, like, how do I get over this fucking wall? You know what I'm saying? Excuse my language, but
no,
you can do it. You can do it. I mean, that's what we're built for. You know what I mean?
So, for those that don't know, we're doing something a little bit different with Black and Forth, being brought to you by the Wave USA as well as Digital-PR. So because of technology and because how we are learning and moving and growing, this conversation that we're having is also taking place on Clubhouse, and it's taking place on another platform as well. And so learning how to simulcast and learning how to tie all of these pieces of technology and information together is really important for the work that we're doing to push the culture forward. So there are a few people that are hitting to be speakers and to join the conversation, and we definitely want to do that. But again, we're actually hosting a live podcast, a live show, talking about wealth principles. If you haven't had the opportunity to check out the Wave USA, you should, on social media platforms as well as YouTube. If you haven't had the opportunity to check out Digital-PR, a fantastic public relations firm. So, all of these different things that we're doing is very intentional. It's very purposeful. And I have had the opportunity to now know Greg going on 3 years, actually. That's crazy, right?
That's a long time. It's a long time, but good times, great times, all the way through.
All the way through. And so anytime I talk to Greg, there literally is a transfer of good energy and information about wealth principles, about investing, about wealth management, about what is on his mind. And it's always from the day that I met Greg. It's always intrigued me. And we actually had a conversation not too long ago, and he said, listen, I got some thoughts on some investments, and this is some things that you can do. And over the last week, I've been evaluating my finances. I've learned my APRs, Greg.
Good. That was your homework. That was your homework.
That was my homework. And so, I think when we have friends in our life that become like family and they really want to see you win and really, really want to help you, then there is this natural thought and progression to share the information. And so I hit Greg and I was like, yo, like, you got to do Black and Forth. You have to just talk about your story, where you come from, and kind of how you got to this point. And not to tell, all of Greg's business, but he's one of the people that I want to be around so I can continue to gain knowledge, but then also use that information and impart it upon myself and have the opportunity to impart it upon others. And so I definitely appreciate you taking the time to be a part of this conversation with Black and Forth, pushing the culture forward and how we can continue to help one another. Any closing remarks? You talked about
Oh
the
my God.
podcast that you listened to. You
Yeah.
talked about, your upbringing and how your parents were influential in the Wave USA, how the making money off of things that you love is so important. And I've really ventured into the telecommunications space because I love all things communication, whether it's verbal, whether it's written, whether it's tech, home security systems, internet. I love the information highway. And so any last things that you want to share with the
Yeah.
community just about your wealth principles and how you're continuing to apply them?
Yeah. Yes. Can I go on? Yes. I got a few things for you. So this book that gave me the greatest set of principles for how I attack wealth building. It's called The Richest Man in Babylon. You should read it. It's a very short read. It's very easy. I think it's like 120 pages maybe. But what he does is basically he lives in Babylon at a time where they were one of the richest countries in the world, or cities in the world, but their riches were fading, and they were falling behind. And so the king hired this one man who had become the richest in the entire community to train everybody. But come to find out, this rich man wasn't born rich; he was poor, and he had got it out the mud, literally out the mud, right? And so he has these 7 principles that you have to abide by. And I read it, and it's like it completely applies to us even now to this day. So please read The Richest Man in Babylon. If I had more time, I could talk y'all through each of them, but please read The Richest Man in Babylon. The other book I would highly recommend is called The 4-Hour Work Week. And basically what they do, oh my God, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. Tim
Yeah.
Ferriss. Tim Ferriss basically breaks down how to become more efficient, how to get the most out of whatever business venture you're in, your 9 to 5. And he also shows you how to actually be a very high performing individual, only committing 4 hours out of your week to whatever job that is. But imagine if you're working 40 hours and you can get it down to 4, or maybe even close, like 20, then what can you do with those other 20 hours, right? And so he just shows you how to do all that, and also how to build wealth through it all. He also shows you how to be really effective at remote working. And I know during COVID, most of us are at home. So there's a lot you can learn about how to be effective remotely. So that's really, really huge. And I will say, I mean, Richest Man in Babylon really stuck out to me because, while my parents, made the right decisions in a lot of things, they came from the bottom, and figured it out. And my parents still haven't given me much. They helped me through college, but they were like, it's your journey. And I made a lot of major mistakes financially. I went really deep into debt, and I fought my way out. I had no credit score, or a laughable credit score. Had to build it from scratch in my late 20s. And so that book stood out to me because no matter where you are in your journey, it's never too late. Like, you can build yourself to whatever wealth you want to be. Being a millionaire is not a lofty goal. It is literally 3-4 plays away. And so for you, it's just about buckling down, getting your house in order, and then figuring out what are those 3 or 4 plays for you. We should not be aspiring to be millionaires, in my opinion. We should be aspiring to be multimillionaires, because reaching that 1 million mark is way too achievable if you really, really attack it. And so I just want to, if nothing else, just say that there's a lot of resources out there. No matter where you are in your journey, you can find your way to the top. I'm also a big advocate of home ownership. I'm launching a brand called Ownership Matters, which is all about informing people on how to become homeowners and manage home ownership. So please check that out on Twitter and Instagram. And we're also on Clubhouse. If you guys are in Clubhouse, we have a club just opened last week called Ownership Matters, to talk about how you can become a homeowner and then ultimately a business owner as well. And then lastly, like, never, ever undermine or disregard the impact of budgeting. And you don't need a fancy spreadsheet. I do my budgeting literally on a piece of paper. 80% of my budgeting happens on a piece of paper. Yes. And not a spreadsheet, not some fancy app, just a pencil and a piece of paper, right? And so just if you can do whatever it takes to put it in front of your mind, to think about your money, to own your money. You spend so much time in your life either working for money or thinking about money and how you're going to pay for this or save for this or deal with that, then you owe it to yourself to be more intentional and strategic about your money. And most importantly, fighting for your dollars, especially when you're paying off bills and dealing with these crazy interest rates from these crazy credit card companies. The credit cards are the devil. So do not let them abuse you and take away your hard-earned money and time. And I think the last thing I will share is that, you know, the ultimate goal is freedom. And so don't get too caught up on the dollar amount. Again, the millionaire thing is something I think we can all can achieve. But what's more valuable than any of that is the freedom of your time, and being able to spend that Tuesday or Monday or Wednesday with your family or with your friends or with traveling versus stressing out in front of a desk. And so the decisions you make right now can put you in a position 2-3 years, maybe for some of you 2-3 months, to have that financial, that actual freedom to live the life that you dream of, as opposed to waiting for someone to give you a vacation. So anyway, that's all I got. I got a lot more wealth principles. I know I'm kind of ranting here, but I really, really appreciate this space. And you guys can follow me at The Action Jackson, TheAction Jackson. Or you can follow me at Brother Who Budgets. That's like a little, if you only care about little money stuff, you can go to Brother Who Budgets on Instagram. And then home ownership, our home ownership group is Ownership Matters. So excited about that. And of course, we all know about The Wave USA because you're listening to Black and Forth at The Wave USA. So anyway, that's my major things I'll share in closing, Nori.
All right, so we're going to wrap up our Black and Forth conversation with Greg. Thank you so much for being here. We're going to continue the conversation on Clubhouse. I have someone, shout out to Aisha, that's raised her hand. We had a few other people that raised their hand in the conversation that can join the stage and talk with us. But again, I'm your host. My name is Nori at It's Nori on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at ITSNORI. If you're on Clubhouse, you know, just hit my little follow profile. I need to add some more stuff to my profile, but I'll get to, I'll get to that. But Greg, I appreciate you. Again, thank you to the Wave USA Digital-PR for creating this platform that we share on and you know, build the culture. So we appreciate you very, very much, and we're gonna sign out on the show.
All right, so we're staying on the Clubhouse.